A thrilling sprint to get things started off Saturday here in Interlagos. It's a McLaren 1-2 with a very late change in position for McLaren. Welcome to your post-sprint show and welcome down here to the pit lane where I'm delighted to say I'm joined immediately by Andrea Sella. Andrea,
Hello.
I know this is the result the team wanted, the result the team needed. But there will be some out there who ask the question of why it was left so late and did you have to risk leaving it that late?
Yeah, first of all, I would like to start by saying that it's very good news that the McLaren 1-2 because we shouldn't give this kind of results for granted. We saw that the car was quick in qualifying yesterday, but confirming this in a race stint with this abrasive tarmac, high tire degradation, it was important. In terms of the final result itself, it's the best result we can have for both championships. This was a clear conversation that we had with our two drivers. Both drivers are completely supportive, cohesive of this kind of approach. We are in a very lucky position to have not only two number one fast drivers, but also two great team players. In terms of executing the swap, obviously this depends on where the others are. And the sufficient gap between the second and the third never really materializes. So we needed to wait, but as soon as we saw that there was a possibility of a virtual safety car or a safety car, we then executed it immediately. So I think pretty much the sprint race went according to plan. It's always a little tense, it's a Formula One competition. I would be surprised if it wasn't the case.
What was the agreement that you had between the drivers this morning? Because we heard Lando on the radio seemingly intimating that whatever had been agreed before was not being executed as had been planned. And on the radio, we heard multiple times the call that the gap to Leclerc was sufficient and you were happy with that gap. So why were those opportunities not taken then? And why was Lando unhappy that it wasn't executed earlier as he seemed to suggest it should have been?
I think there's quite a lot of subjective interpretation in your question, which is fair enough. It's your job. I respect it. But going with the numbers more objectively, I think if you swap, like we have seen as soon as we swapped with Oscar, Verstappen was just there. And this is a situation that we wanted to avoid. So numbers in hand, it would have been very risky to swap when you have the car behind, even 1.5 seconds or something. We were ideally waiting for having a couple of seconds, which never really materialized. And also there was a bit of variation in the gaps between the second and the third, so the situation never really stabilized consistently to execute the maneuver with enough margin. So I think it's all makes sense from objective number in hand point of view. If you are a Formula One driver and you are second, you're always going to be a little nervous. So we deeply respect this aspect as well, but like I said before, the reality is that our conversations have always been, not only this morning, but even in the previous races, extremely constructive and cohesive, and definitely is going to be the case for the remainder of the weekend and for the final part of the season.
So why was Lando frustrated in those early laps, and why was that call that the gap to Leclerc was sufficient?
I think I answered already, didn't I? When you are second, you would like to get first and forget about the rest.
It's a racing driver thing. He always wants to be first.
I think I'm extremely comfortable. I would be much more worried right now in this interview if Lando wasn't concerned somehow. Like, then something is actually out of place. So happy that he is concerned. But like I said before, numbers in hand, the situation went pretty well. I would actually welcome many more of these kind of situations like this under control and with this kind of outcome.
We were talking before we came on air, a thrilling race. It was a thrilling race. The pace of Ferrari, but the pace of Red Bull, especially today for Max Verstappen. How much of a concern is that with you for the rest of the weekend? Do you think you've got much work to do on the car before qualifying?
Well, we have to acknowledge that Red Bull were fast today. And well done to them. You know, like they seem to be struggling, but then when it's the time to deliver a result, they do it. But we know they are the world champions. Verstappen is the world champion. No surprise. We need to do a very good job to stay ahead of them. Let's see what we can improve moving from the sprint to the main race. And as you said, the sprint that in the past have been commented as being a little boring, actually they have become quite exciting, which is good for Formula One.
It is indeed, Andrea. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you
For tolerating my
Cheers.
questions. I appreciate it. Thank you, Andrea. Let's welcome in James Hinchcliffe. You will have heard on commentary in that sprint. Hinch, come on in, my friend. What a thriller. What a great race.
Unbelievable. And look, we've been saying it. We've been hyping it up all week. This track produces good racing. Sprint format, Grand Prix format, doesn't matter. And luckily, we were right. We were proven right today, which is always nice.
It was brilliant. Now, I don't know how much of what you heard of what Andrea was saying there, but let's take it back right to the start of the Grand Prix. Piastri stays ahead of Norris. That was executed perfectly. But from quite early on, Lando's saying, we agreed this. We agreed that I'd get ahead. Andrea said the gap to Leclerc was never sufficient for them to have made that switch. And my questions were subjective. He was looking at objectively of the numbers. Would you agree with that interpretation? Or do you think that possibility arose earlier and they should have taken advantage of that?
Here's the thing. The gap when they did execute the swap was no bigger, and they did it just fine. The plan ended the way they wanted it to. It ended to plan. It did not go to plan. They got very lucky that virtual safety car came out when it did. Very lucky.
Because if it comes out a lap earlier than that, it's done, it's over.
Which
it could have done.
Should have done.
Should have done.
When you see a driver out of a Grand Prix car walking away this far from a green racetrack, I start questioning why then 30 seconds later does the VSC come out. The timing of the VSC was very bizarre to me, but more importantly, like when they executed that swap, the gap was no bigger, it was no smaller, it was the same. So they proved they could do it. Why not do it earlier? Give Lando the clean air. Give him the buffer of a teammate in between. Had he made one little mistake, locked up into turn 1, had an oversteer moment into turn 6, Max could have pounced, and it would have been a very different conversation. The result was what they wanted. And look, you don't know everything that happens on pit wall. It's so easy to make this call and then have this judgment from sitting up in an air-conditioned booth. But it still seems like they dodged a real bullet. And if I'm this team, I'm doing a post-mortem after this event and seeing how we could have done it better, because I don't think it was done the best it could have been.
Fascinating. We will get into this more, I'm sure, but a brilliant run from the McLarens to bring home that one too. Lucky, ultimately, in the end, but a great race from Max Verstappen, a great race from Charles Leclerc. I'm sure a few beers might get sent down Ferrari's way from McLaren for him holding Verstappen for so many laps. And actually, the two of them working quite nicely together. Verstappen saying, come on, Charles, stop making mistakes. We need to stay with them during that Grand Prix. But under VSC, Sam Collins, I know you've been looking at this because the restart, when Max Verstappen got incredibly close to Oscar Piastri, something's going on with that. This may not be the final result.
Yeah, that's right, Will. There is action going on in race control at the moment. Just after the checkered flag drop, it was announced that Max Verstappen is under investigation for this moment I'm about to show you. And I'll explain why this is under investigation in a second. This is the moment at the end of the VSC, Oscar Piastri in front of Verstappen, trying to get a good run at him. And it looks like a great overtaking manoeuvre. But as I roll this back, as they're overlapped, you can see it just there on the top of your screen. We're still under VSC conditions, but Max Verstappen is racing. He's got an overlap on the McLaren. And as I play this through to the end of the clip, you'll see when Max Verstappen gets the green to go racing again. Just note, though, that Verstappen backs off quite clearly. I think he was aware that the VSC flag was still there. He couldn't race. He couldn't overtake. You're not allowed to overtake under VSC. He didn't overtake the McLaren. But in the race director's notes, there is a little note saying you're not allowed to overlap with the car in front at the restart. But that's for full safety car conditions, not for virtual safety car conditions. So it's a little bit up to the FIA what they decide to do. But as I say, Max Verstappen is going to be up at race control explaining this moment, Will, and that could be a little bit of a result changer.
Interesting stuff, Sam. Thank you for that. It says it's ultimately down to the FIA to make that determination. We'll see what they decide. Bruno Senna's joined us. How did you enjoy that?
That was pretty cool. Strategy playing on the McLaren side this time. I think normally it's been always sort of touch and go, so it's really great to see them working together, get a good team result. At the restart, at the very last lap, it was kind of close there between Max and Oscar. I was like, whoa, he's not even going to defend, but in the end, it turned out good.
It did, well, for the moment, unless the stewards have their say on that. This is such an important weekend for Brazil, I know for your family as well. Your uncle's car's getting taken out tonight by Lewis. I know you've driven so many of your uncle's cars. What's Lewis got to look forward to?
Well, 5 years ago, I drove the MP44 here in Interlagos. The first time that car was out here in Interlagos. And I tell you what, the vibe from the crowd and on this track was something it's impossible to describe. So I think Lewis will get this taste today. He's got a bit of an advantage because he's got a V10 engine behind him that's going to tear the circuit apart. And I think it's going to be amazing for everyone to watch. I mean, I'll be there down there with him when he sets off, and I can't wait.
Obviously, it's a hugely meaningful moment for your family. The fact that it's Lewis getting into that car and doing that, somebody who idolized your uncle when he was a kid and has made really no secret of that, is an honorary Brazilian citizen. Does that mean a lot to your family?
Of course. I mean, it's Lewis has never made it a secret that he's a huge fan of Ayrton. He's always helped us keep the image and the legacy of Ayrton alive in so many ways. So we're very happy that Lewis is driving. I think the whole crowd is super happy as well. They all, have Lewis as a Brazilian as well. So he needs to learn a bit better Portuguese. I think he's missing a bit on that, but we'll teach him, no worries.
We're just seeing some footage, actually, of you driving around here. Well, you've driven Formula One. What is it like to drive one of those historic cars, and not just any car? Like those colors, that noise, that power, so small, so light, so nimble around this great track in front of these great fans.
Look, every time I drive one of those cars, I respect these guys more and more because, I mean, you don't fit in this car. They're made so tight inside. You can barely move inside. The comfort is something you can forget about. They get hot, they get tight, you get bruises everywhere.
H-box.
H-box. I mean, for me, I'm sitting on Ayrton's seat, so the gearbox is not even like in my hand. It's sort of like on my wrist, so I have to drive like this. But it's a pleasure because you sort of like feel like you're part of a history. I drove this car in Monaco this year at the historic Grand Prix, and Thierry Boutsen was in the black Lotus at the same time. This was something else. Honestly, it felt like I was on the track there with Ayrton at that time. It was something else.
Oh, man, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Listen, I want to have a word very quickly about the young drivers in Formula One who have made such a splash this year. Your Ollie Behrmans, your Liam Lawsons, and particularly someone like Franco Colapinto, who this crowd, it seems like it's a half Argentine crowd, but even the Brazilians are getting behind him. They were cheering his name down there on the grid earlier today. I haven't seen that for a long time.
I mean, Franco obviously is doing extremely well. He jumped into the car like this. It's never easy to do something like this. And everybody jokes about the rivalry between Brazilians and Argentinians. It's in football. In motor racing, Fangio and Ayrton are unanimous in between Brazil and Argentina. And now all the Brazilian fans are really supporting him. Ollie did a great job. He's killing it in qualifying as well. So, it's good to see the young guys coming in. We have hopefully a couple of Brazilians that are knocking on the doors as well. And, you can see the talent that's coming from Formula 2, doing well in F1. See Kimi next year in Mercedes. It's exciting times.
Yeah, a lot of chat around Bortoleto at the moment. A lot of chat around him. Bruno, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it. We're so looking forward to tonight and seeing that car around here. Thanks, buddy. Thank you very much for coming on. Now, we were talking a little earlier about Charles Leclerc and the great job that he did today. Why don't we hear from the Ferrari driver?
Charles, P4 at the end of that, it looked like a mighty battle with Max. Can you talk us through that from your perspective, please?
I had no rears at all. I mean, I pushed a lot at the beginning. I think Max was a lot more on the reserve at the beginning and then started pushing at the end, and he had more pace. I mean, he did a better job with time management. On my side, I wanted to take risk at the beginning to try and put pressure on the McLaren, but it didn't work out.
That is the key, isn't it, Hinch? Verstappen needed Leclerc to stay with those two McLarens because he was saving his tires. Max played it so smart today.
No surprise. Nobody should be shocked by that. Max's ability to think through these scenarios in real time is phenomenal. His mental capacity, we've talked about that time and time again. He's got so much mental capacity in reserve when he's on the absolute limit of a Formula One car, and that's one of the biggest advantages he's got. He knew what he was doing. He went by Leclerc when he had to, and he just came a few laps short. The pace, I think, was a little bit better than the Ferrari had, ultimately. But, ran out of laps. The VSC certainly helped the McLaren guys keep that gap down. But, no, Max, again, with not the best car on the track, is still performing above expectation.
He is putting in champion drives every single weekend at the moment in a car in which he's not won a Grand Prix since Spain, which is still an astonishing statistic for me. The fact that he fought so hard to get just one extra point today. How much does that show he's aware of just how tight this championship could be?
Max is a winner. Max only wants to win. He wants to maximize every time he's in the race car. And look, it's a comfortable buffer right now. It is. I know we're talking a lot about how all Lando has to do is 12 points, but it's a big buffer. He's in a comfortable position. He doesn't care. That's not how he gets up in the morning. He never thinks about comfort. He thinks about speed. He thinks about winning. And it's great to see that even with that sort of a gap to P2, he is still just as cutthroat as he's always been, going for every single available point.
It was a fantastic, really exciting sprint that we had right from the off. So many great drives today. I want to pull very quickly to Pierre Gasly, because he's ultimately sacrificed a bit of Sunday for speed this morning in the sprint, using that medium tire, really gunning for it. He won't have that now for the Grand Prix, but it meant that Alpine critically got some points.
And that's huge, especially in the sprint format. To be in the top 7 in that car right now is incredible. He had that grid position in Coda, couldn't get the points, closed last week in Mexico, and it's just great to see him on form, the team on form. And look, you got to capitalize. When you're in those midfield, especially lower midfield spots like Alpine is right now, you have to sacrifice anything and capitalize on every possibility. So guaranteed top 10 starting spot, chance at points today. Who knows what's going to happen this afternoon and what position they're going to be in tomorrow. So if you have to do a bit of a sacrifice now, it's worth it.
So many great drives over this triple header, the likes of Leclerc, Sainz, of course, winning the Grand Prix. Everybody looking at Colapinto and Liam Lawson. But for me, I think Gasly's been one of my drivers of these 3 weekends. Let's hear from the Frenchman.
Pierre, great sprint qualifying, great sprint race, getting some points on the board. How do you feel about that one?
Yeah, extremely happy. That's our best result of the year. All combined sprint and Grand Prix. So no, very very pleased. Started P7, finished P7, managed to hang on until the end in front of Checo, and top of the midfield. So it was hard race, more degradation than we expected, but managed to do it, and it's 2 very valuable points for the team.
Lovely stuff with Pierre. Now let's also talk about Sergio Perez, because what a battling drive that was today. I was really impressed.
This is what we expect to see. You know, if he does have a bad qualifying session, is to see that sort of charge back up to the field. That's what that car's capable of. That's what we know Checo's capable of when he's feeling good behind the wheel. And look, a little extra motivation probably that last points paying spot was Liam Lawson. I think, again, it's more than the point there. It was the pride on that one. But no, it was for just a sprint race, no pit stops, no strategy, just foot down and moving up the grid to get into the points is huge.
How much does it indicate maybe that this new chassis is helping him, but also that his exit yesterday wasn't all of his own making?
No, it wasn't. They mistimed that second run. You know, you look, Piastri goes out on a second run on the tires, puts it on pole. Checo was trying to also do a second run. He knew he'd made a little bit of a mistake in that first one, but the team miscalculated the timing. He was not able to get to the start-finish line before the checkered. So that one as much on the team as Checo. Yes, the counter-argument is, well, he should have got it done in the first lap. Fine. Mistakes happen, and he's human. He was going to get that other opportunity, but the team kind of robbed him of it. So maybe this is showing what the true pace is in the car.
Liam Lawson. He, again, got his elbows out today in that battle with Perez. It's always spicy between those two, but in a far inferior car, put up a nice fight.
A great fight, and it was a very respectful one, which I think was very important. Maybe a little bit of a wrist slap after Mexico, having contact with Checo. So again, credit to Lawson, great job in qualifying. Held on as long as he could to that final points paying position, but ultimately, as you said, the car advantage that Checo's got at this point, he should be getting around him. They both raced each other hard, but they raced each other fair, and that's what's important.
One driver who lost positions at the start, but then went on an absolute tear, was Lewis Hamilton. Let's hear how he enjoyed his sprint.
Lewis, it sounded like the car was a bit of a handful yesterday. How was it feeling out there for you today? And can you talk us through your race, please?
Horrendous. Honestly, it felt really terrible today. Even worse than it did in qualifying. So definitely a very difficult race. That's one of the worst races I've felt. The car just sliding around and zero grip behind. Even the Williams could barely keep up with them for a period of time. So lots of work to do to try and change the car, flip it on its head for quali. Thanks, Lewis.
Hamilton of his car, not even able to fight with the Williams. Traditionally, James, we've seen the Mercedes, if they've made changes between the sprint and the Grand Prix, actually go in the wrong direction. Can they go Wronger.
Wronger. Anything's possible. I feel like with that group right now, it's been probably the least consistent race car across the whole season when you think about it. We said this last week, race to race, day to day, sometimes even session to session, morning to afternoon. The swings in performance are just remarkable. For all we know, they could change nothing on the car and he could go out and put it in the top 4. You know, you just don't know. But it's crazy to think that he had that kind of feeling behind the wheel, but still managed to put up a pretty good drive. I think the degradation higher than people expected, as you heard Gasly say, that played a part today, and it's going to play a part in the Grand Prix tomorrow.
From an inconsistent car to an incredibly consistent super sub, Mr. Ollie Behrman. Let's hear from him.
Ollie, latest Super Sub weekend. It looked like quite a busy sprint race for you out there. A couple of moments with Nico. Can you talk us through that one?
Yeah. I mean, I had quite a bad start, but I managed to make up a few spots on lap 1. After that, settling into the race, things were feeling quite good, but then gradually started to struggle with the tires more and more. And at the end, just really lacking pace. So we got some work to do for tomorrow.
Thanks, Ollie.
Great stuff from Ollie Behrman today. Ruth Buscombe-Davey joins us. Ruth, as we were saying in the pre-show, no pit stops in the sprint, but still a chance to play around with strategy and tyres. We've already talked about Gasly doing that job on the mediums. Did anyone else try anything a bit different today that you saw?
Yeah, we had all 20 cars on the medium, but it was Pierre Gasly and Liam Lawson that actually chose to run their only new set of medium tyres today, and it worked so well for both of them, compounded with a really great drive, I have to say. You know, it's not just strategy, the drivers, you know, do add some stuff too.
They play a part in it.
Yeah, they play a part.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was a great move by them. You know, 2 points for Alpine. You know, they hadn't scored since Zandvoort, and now they've scored 2 weekends on the trot. And the same thing, great drive by Liam. They'll pay the price tomorrow. They don't have any new sets left. Everyone else has kept the new sets, but I think it was exactly the right thing to do to capitalise on that sprint qualifying position.
Talking about capitalising, McLaren, team orders, the execution of that. What did you make of it?
Oh, I was yelling at the TV, swap. I was next to Hinch, causing all sorts of drama. No, you just want it to go down to the wire, don't you? You want kind of like Lando to have the absolute best chance possible, just for the show, really. It's nice now that we get to watch it. You know, I think, again, my training in Ferrari, we would have swapped him, you know, Budapest. So I think I'm also probably biased, but yeah, you know, it's just so close, wasn't it? Any kind of safety car, any kind of virtual safety car. You know, I like the bit where Max was complaining about Charles's driving because he was making more of a gap, which is, that wasn't on my bingo card for today.
I love that. I really love that. Would you have pulled the plug earlier on making that switch?
Yeah, I think I would have pulled the plug around race 5, though. People would be complaining about me the other way round. So I appreciate I'm probably too far the other side because, you know, in Ferrari, you know, the mantra was always Ferrari exists to win the Drivers' Championship when I was there. So, yeah, I'd probably get complaints the other way.
Okay, so never mind lap 5, race 5.
Yeah.
Race 5 is when Ruth would have done that. Right, let's hear from your top 3 drivers today. Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris.
Max, it looked like the car came alive for you in that race, and then until the VSC at the end, can we get your reflections on how that unfolded?
Yeah, I think the pace was quite strong. We just have to be patient because in the beginning we're just stuck in a DRS train, so you can't really do much. You just have to wait for people to either drop off or make a mistake. And yeah, we just hung in there, and yeah, eventually I could pass Charles and close the gap to the McLarens, but then of course, unfortunately, yeah, the VSC came out, so that was then race over.
Thanks, Max. Oscar, leading that one for so long, you played the team game in the end. Can you talk us through the approach to that race and your reflections on it, please?
Yeah, it was a bit of a tricky race, to be honest. Just trying to learn what we could for tomorrow. And yeah, I think, you know, the team result was obviously what we wanted and what we spoke about before the race. So I think it all went to plan, and learned a lot for tomorrow.
Thanks, Oscar. So Lando, you got the win. It sounded a little bit tense on the radio at times. Can we just get your reflections on how the race unfolded and how that was managed from McLaren's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's always tense when you have 2 cars just behind you, and you know, Oscar was just ahead, but we managed it well. It's not an easy position to be in, whether or not people say it is. It's not, and I think between Oscar and myself, we handled it well. I could have attacked him a lot more in the beginning, but I was confident that things were going to change and we were going to do as we planned. So Yeah, always a little risk in doing what we did, but we did it well and we did what we needed to do.
Thanks, Lando.
Quite a brave face on that. Seems Lando wanted it done much earlier and believed there was the opportunity to do so. Now we are still waiting for news from the stewards on exactly what Max Verstappen's potential infringement under the virtual safety car might be. As Sam Collins was saying earlier, the rules for a full safety car is that you have to stay fully behind. You can't pull alongside. Those rules don't exist under the virtual safety car, but you're not allowed to drive your car in a way that is either slow or erratic. Perhaps going up on the inside of Oscar might be deemed to be that. We'll wait and see what the stewards determine. But guys, what a racing start to this weekend. The sprint has absolutely delivered a thrilling start to Saturday.
And you got to think about it. All we have to look forward to after another, what I'm sure will be incredibly close qualifying session, is a race with more strategy, pit stops, different tire compounds. There's no reason that the Grand Prix is not going to be even better than what we saw today.
And Ruth, potentially rain.
Exactly. You know, even today, it's not 100% going to be dry. There is a risk, especially if we get a red flag delay. But yeah, tomorrow, the chance keeps creeping up. What do we say? Throw the laptops away, just look up. And if it is wet, we have never not had a great wet race here. 2016, 2012, they've all been classics. So yeah, I'm kind of hoping. I'm doing my rain dance. I'm doing my rain dance.
I can't recall ever having not a great race here, dry or wet. This place is phenomenal. Right, here's where you can catch all the rest of the action this weekend. And of course, it starts this afternoon with Grand Prix qualifying. Here on F1 TV, you can catch it at 2:30 local time. That is in 2 hours and 22 minutes. Race, that was very specific, wasn't it? The race itself, 1 p.m. on Sunday. Well, what an absolutely thrilling start to Saturday here in Interlagos. My thanks to Ruth, to James, to Alex Jakes, to Ariana Bravo, and to Bruno Senna as well for being on our pre and post shows and bringing you all of the action. Join us for Grand Prix qualifying. If this weekend so far is anything to go by, it's going to be absolutely sensational. We'll see you later.